Hello, your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley here again, back for another episode of the History of Comics podcast, this time with the history of romance comics. Like most genres, love stories are probably as old as fiction itself. From ancient myths to modern day, romance is a classic genre told across mediums and comic books, and they are no exception. The origin of all these began with the first modern love story, Pride and Prejudice, by Jane Austen. Published in 1813, that was not only a classic in its own right, it continues to be adapted to this day, but arguably launched the modern romance genre with its mix of humor, romance, superb dialogue, and the classic of all tropes, the love triangle. Jane Austen, with this and the rest of her books, didn't just create classic stories, but a rash of imitators across all mediums. Soon, pulp magazines began to expand into the romance genre and was probably the most popular of the medium, catering to mostly female audiences. Some examples were Love Story magazines, All Story Love Tales, and Love Book. Of these, Love Story magazine was the most popular, running from 1921 to 1947 for 1,158 issues, and reaching a height of 600,000 issues in circulation in 1932. What's notable about it was the high standards of storytelling, though it did play up the glamorous love matched with wholesome stories as well. However, these pulp magazines will be replaced with full-blown romance paperback books in the 1960s, which continue to this day, as any trip to the grocery store's book rack will tell you. Comic books hadn't quite jumped to full-blown romance books yet, though an early precursor would be the teenage humor books, which had a recurrent romance theme. The prime example was Archie by MLJ Comics, which would later change its name to Archie Comics. The title character was named by Archie Comics founder John Goldwater, who named him after a high school friend. Artist Bob Montana co-created Archie and designed him to look like a combination of actor Mickey Rooney and the fictional Tom Sawyer. The former was intentional, as John Goldwater wanted to capitalize on the popularity of Mickey Rooney's movie's success in the Andy Hall films at the time. Archie first appeared in Pep Comics number 22 in December of 1941, and later Jackpot number 4 in 1941 to 42. Archie would then appear on the cover of Pep Comics number 36 of February 1943 with the characters The Shield, who was originally the principal cover character for Pep, and the Hangman, other MLJ superhero characters who were carrying him. Soon, Archie took over the covers by issue number 51. By Pep's Comics number 66 in March of 1948, Archie became the main feature of the comic, replacing The Shield fully. While the stories were mostly a teen humor book about Archie's adventures as a high school student with his friend Jughead, it did have a prominent romance angle, the main story being the classic love triangle between Archie, Veronica Lodge, and Betty Cooper. Veronica was presented as the ideal high school girlfriend, while Betty was the girl next door, more or less the standard love triangle template. Archie Comics was predated by Wilbur and Zip Comics number 18 on September 1941, and Hip Hazard at Ace Comics, but Archie is still remembered as the teen comic that started the genre. However, it hadn't quite launched the romance comic genre, but that was a step towards it. Soon, Archie number 1 premiered in the winter of 1942, becoming the first teen humor comic book title. While the comic was considered family-friendly, Bob Montana's art is noted for his ability to draw beautiful female characters, if not downright sexy. An irony says Archie's co-creator, John Goldwater, would later head the Comic Magazine Association of America, which ran the Comic Code's authority that sanitized the medium. Of course, with the success of Archie, imitators would follow. One notable copycat was Patsy Walker, who debuted in Miss America number 2 on November 1944 at Timely, the future Marvel. Created by writer Stuart Little and artist Ruth Atkinson, her stories were originally about her teen adventures with her boyfriend Buzz and Ravenhead rival Hetty Wolf. She would later get her own title in 1945, along with spin-offs like Patsy and Hetty, Patsy and Her Pals, and A Date with Patsy. Interestingly enough, Patsy Walker number 95 would be one of the first Marvel Age books, along with Journey into Mystery number 69 on June of 1961, being the first to carry the Marvel MC logo on the cover. Patsy Walker and Hetty Wolf would later appear in the Fantastic Four Annual number 3, which, in line with the romance angle of this podcast, was the all-star wedding of Reed Richards and Sue Storm / Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman in 1965, establishing them into the larger Marvel continuity. She would later accompany the Avengers in Avengers number 141 on November 1975 before becoming a superhero in Hellcat in Avengers number 144 on February 1976. Walker Hellcat then joined the Defenders in issue number 44 on February 1977 of the series, where she met Hellstorm, the son of Satan, and later married him in issue number 125 on February 1981, once again keeping with her original romantic roots. As for those roots, it would be explained in Defenders number 89 on November 1980 that they were made up by her mother, Dorothy, as fictional works, essentially a fictional story inside the fictional Marvel Universe, basing them on Patsy and her actual friends. All this has been acknowledged in the Jessica Jones Netflix series with Patsy Trisswalker, played by Rachel Taylor, who was a former child star before becoming a talk show host, while dreaming to become a superhero like her best friend, Jessica Jones. Back in the 1940s, in classic timely fashion under its owner Martin Goodwin, the company flooded the market with teen comic books like Hetty Devine and Millie the Model in the winter of 1945. Millie the Model was created by Ruth Atkinson as well and would last until the 1970s with issue number 207, surviving the turbulent times throughout Marvel's history before finally ending on December of 1973. It remains Marvel's longest-running humor title in general, and she would also be established as part of the larger Marvel universe when she also appeared in Fantastic Four Annual number 3. And Alex Ross even made a point of painting her in when he recreated the Richard Storm wedding in the Marvel's miniseries. Millie still makes sporadic appearances in Marvel Comics to this day, and even starred in a 4-issue miniseries, Models Inc., from October 2009 to January 2010. Other books from Timely were My Friend Irma about a wacky secretary, Meet Me Miss Bliss by Stan Lee and Al Hartley about a school teacher, and Sherry the Showgirl about a movie star. At National, the future DC, A Date with Judy was launched in 1947, along with Leave It to Binky and Scribbly in 1948 and Buzzy in 1944. Another was Calling All Girls in September of 1941, which was the first comic book aimed exclusively at girls, featuring a variety of stories. The intention was to approach girls who were not boy crazy. It later became Senior Prom with issue number 90 in 1950. However, while all these teen humor books often had a heavy romance angle, they weren't romance books in full, but all that was about to change. On July of 1947, My Date was published by Hillman Publications, created by writer Joe Simon and artist Jack Kirby, the creators of Captain America, about Swifty Chase, a teen athlete who competed with his Rivey Stubby Schemer. This was still a teen humor book and would only last for 4 issues until January 1948, but it gave the two comic book greats an idea. Joe Simon believed that romance would be a natural conversion after World War II, as people were tired of action and wanted some love. Seeing an opportunity, Simon and Kirby took their idea to Crestwood Publications before My Date was even finished about a romance book, and as part of the deal, received a then unheard of 50% profit share. So, on September-October of that same year, under Crestwood's Prize Group imprint, Young Romance was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and with that, the romance comic book genre. It was an instant success, and 2 years later was followed by Young Love in February of 1949, and soon both comics were selling 1 million copies an issue. Young Romance itself soon became so popular the series went from bi-monthly to monthly by its 13th issue on September 1949. Today is widely considered the first romance comic book ever created, and as pointed out earlier by the creators of Captain America of all people, and in 2004 was named one of the top 100 comic books of all time. Of course, with the romance genre created, the ripoffs would soon follow, with My Romance number 4 in August 1948 by Timely, and My Life number 4 in September 1948 by Victor Fox, which had originally been Meet Corliss Archer. Sweethearts would replace Captain Midnight with issue number 68 on October 1948 at Fawcett. The comic book contained a pretty racy story with I Was a Pickup, but it originally had a sad ending before a contrived happy one. Boy Crazy in issue number 2 was also pretty racy, about a girl trying to steal her aunt's boyfriend. Of course, these were mixed with numerous crime stories, though it removed for more adult readers of the comics by issue number 4. My Romance covers very related to the stories, like many comic books, and My Own Romance number 4 featured the first photo cover. Issue number 3 also carried a letter attacking comic book critic Frederick Warren. Venus, another timely comic book, went through multiple trends, with the first half being a romance about the Greek goddess of love, but by issue number 11 in 1950, it became a horror title. Soon, Sweethearts became the first monthly comic book, and also noted for their photo covers, with actor Robert Richardson appearing in the first issue and Glenn Ford appearing on the second. As predicted by Joe Simon, the romance genre quickly became the most popular in the comic book medium after World War II. By December 1949, there were 64 different titles as opposed to just 11 at the beginning of the month, with comics ranging from sleazy to blatant knockoffs. Fox Syndicate, as with all of the comic books by Victor Fox, portrayed humans in a poor light and Norse setting. Timely was more happy and in their romance comic books, while quality was more varied with Campus Love in December 1949, which was one of the first comic books set in the college. There was also humor with Love Diary #1 in September 1949 about a man writing a girl's diary. It featured some classic stories, and keeping with the times, used communists as the villains, such as Tyranny Broke My Heart and Flaming Love #1 on December 1949 about an American girl who falls for a communist boy abroad. While never as risque as what the Fox Syndicate would produce, the company was known for the lingerie issues, i.e. comic books featuring girls in their underwear, no doubt to appeal to young male readers. American Comics Group, ACG, produced Romantic Adventures and Lovelorn in 1949 and were successful enough that, though they would be the only romance titles of the company, both would last for over 100 issues into the 1960s. It also featured a new subgenre in line with Western romances. Ace did Real Love, Glamorous Love, Romance, and All Love, which replaced Hip, Hazard, Dottie, and Ernie, respectively, all which were former teen books. St. John did Teenage Romances and Teenage Diary Secrets and was noted by the covers of Matt Baker, who was also always brilliant at female form. The success of romance comics soon affected other genres, with Sensation Comics, the home of Wonder Woman at the time, becoming a Sensation Romance Comics, now a mix of science fiction, superheroes, and romance. Much of this was due to the passing of a creator, William Moulton Marston, who died in 1947, and I always envisioned her as a strong, independent woman. With Marston gone, she was now more demure under National's management, with issues number 94 to 98 dedicated to romance tales. Steve Trevor, her longtime love, even carried Wonder Woman across a stream at one point. Seriously, when would Wonder Woman need a man to carry her across anything? Issues number 95 to 96 address the classic love triangle superheroes always deal with, as their lovers being in love with one or both their identities. Also classically illustrated with the Superman, Clark Kent, and Lois Lane dynamic. On the cover of 95, Steve Trevor takes off Diana's glasses, accusing her of being Wonder Woman, and in the issue, she's able to convince him otherwise. In issue number 96, Wonder Woman chases into multiple costumes at a charity event, more than a few meant to appeal to young female readers, while posing as both herself and Diana, who eventually kisses Steve Trevor. There is a further romantic angle to this, as Wonder Woman knows under Amazonian law she cannot marry Steve Trevor, but as a mortal Diana, she can. In issue number 97, Steve offers her flowers as she considers marrying him. This is contrasted with Diana becoming the editor of Hopeless Hearts Department at the Daily Globe to be romance editor, seeing an opportunity for a normal life with Steve. However, she eventually decides to be Wonder Woman with issue number 98, realizing the world needs her more than Steve Trevor. It will be the end of Sensation Comics romance stories, as the series returned to the Wonder Woman's more classic heroics. Romance Incorporated had Anne Martin as a hostess, who predated Ann Landers as an advice columnist for years. The character would even make appearances in DC proper. However, all these romance books would lead to what would be unofficially called the love glut, as the market would soon be oversaturated with love. The success for romance comics continued as there was 256 comic books in 1949, which would soon explode to 332 by 1950. It was part of 2,251 comic book titles in general at the time, showing that there were 1 in 4 comic books were in the romance genre. However, the glut caused a backlash, and the number of romance titles would drop to 61 by the end of 1950. Marvel canceled 25 to 30 titles, with many not reaching past the 3rd issue, while Fox canceled all 21 titles and died altogether in 1951. Fawcett canceled 13 and Quality canceled 14, and soon the romance was 2 of 147 titles at the time. All this brought about numerous companies cashing in on the popularity of the romance genre. My Romance got racy with issue number 5, with a cover of a woman blackmailing a man, while Liv Gleason got to the romance market with Lover's Lane in October 1949 and Boy Meets Girl in February 1950. It's interesting to note how Gleason used advertisements meant to appeal to insecure audiences, mostly young females, like I was ashamed of my face and lose weight where it shows the most. Fawcett published love mystery and Negro romances in 1950, but with all these romance books, it wouldn't be long before others started to make fun of them. Most notable of all was Modern Love number 8 at EC Comics with the story to End All Love Stories by Bill Gaines and Al Feinstein, with the credit, blame this on Feldstein. The story was about publisher T. Todd, who had fallen in love with Corbina, who really only cares about food and fashion. So he decides to cancel all his crime books, like Crime Ought to Pay, a nod to the classic Crime Does Not Pay comic, with Love Comics. However, the market is soon flooded, driving his writers, Jack Lehman and Joe Curry, a nod to Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, to suicide, while Todd goes bankrupt because of it. Gaines and Feldstein, in their usual sharp writing, not only mocked the romance genre in general, but brought to light the love glut. Crestwood published the first Western romance with Real West Romances number 1 in May of 1949, and was soon added Western Love number 1 on July of 1949. National did Romance Trail #1 in July-August 1949, and soon 13 more titles were added to the subgenre, such as Marvel's Romance of the West #1 on November of 1949, and